Welcome to this episode of The Secret To, the podcast where we speak to industry leaders to give us their hidden success formulas across film, TV, music and the FMCG industries, all brought to you by Paradise, the agency for entertaining brands. And I'm your host, Emma Bartholomew. Today, we're going to explore the secret to killer festival brand partnerships with the commercial and brand partnership manager at festival giant Boomtown. Steve, welcome to the Secret To podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's great
Pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here. Now, you must be the busiest man anywhere right now. So what are you doing in a podcast studio with me?
Well, just here because you kindly asked me. It's a pleasure to be here. I've always got time for things like this. It's great to sort of come in and talk about my job. Have a chat, have a little rest.
Absolutely. So what does your role encompass?
So
Everything.
My role encompasses brand partnerships and commercial partnerships. So anywhere from the partnerships between us and the festival bar provider to working with brands themselves, also helping with ideation of ideas for brand partners. So we kind of design and build a lot of stuff in-house. So we work with a brand to create an idea from like the Boomtown creative energy through my knowledge of festivals, and then we look to bring it to market or bring it to the festival over a period of usually a year, starting with an idea, a genesis of an idea, and then working with the brand across a year to design and build something that fits into the festival. But a million other things at the same time.
Yeah,
so,
I realise it's really hard to condense a role. It's not really a role, it's like a life, isn't it?
So pretty much, yeah. Festival life is definitely, you have to be very much part of the festival world to do a job like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. If you don't love festivals and being in a field constantly, and being on the road,
it would be a bit of a block.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So just from what you were just saying, I was interested to ask one thing, which is, do the brands approach you, or do you? I mean, I would imagine being Boomtown, people want a piece of the pie, but do you ever go out and seek people that you'd love to work with?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination. I mean, brands obviously come to us, especially brands that are looking to do things in that year, in their brand arc, and then also I head up sort of selling the festival, so I'll go out to agencies working directly with brands just to see who's doing what and who's looking to explore being part of Boomtown, really, yeah. So it kind of goes both ways. Sometimes you have a brand come to you. Sometimes I reach out to them. It's a combination, really.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And it's kind of what I would imagine. And I'm interested to know, this sounds like a really stupid question maybe, but I think it would be really helpful to break it down. And the question is, why are brand partnerships good for festivals? Apart from the obvious, the revenue stream, all of that, making your festival site an exciting place for the crowd to come to. Why are they so key now?
Well, I think they're key now. You know, you mentioned the revenue just then. I mean, the revenue is even more important now for festivals because of the pressure on, simply just putting the festival on. There's such huge pressure that getting that P&L solid and having the ability to do creative things is incredibly important, especially for a show like Boomtown, where, a lot of shows will spend incredible amounts on various things they do, but a large proportion of our spend is on the theatrical element of Boomtown. We build and design a city over a month, which sits in a field, and that is incredibly expensive to do. And working with brands who want to be part of that city, who want to weave their brands into the city, is something that can help us from a baseline point of view to get money into the show, and also allow us to create more theatrical stuff, bring more music in, bring more DJs in, and essentially allow people to have an even better time. So it's really key, especially these days.
So sort of like the foundation of the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're part of the foundation. I can't think, with a festival especially the size of Boomtown, without brand support these days, it's very difficult to put on.
Yeah, okay. So from a festival point of view, I'd like to sort of break this down into like the festival side and then the brand side maybe, because I suppose you have to have an overview of both those sides and how it all fits together and how everything aligns. But from the festival side to start with, how can festivals kind of cleverly weave in the brand partnerships in terms of engaging with their audience in the lead up to the event? And then obviously in the event, it's the activation itself. But are the partnerships a key part of your messaging, or is it just like they're going to be in the field, that's it?
I think the partnerships are definitely becoming more key in our messaging. Obviously, they sort of live on our website, in some of our social media posts, especially brands. Like last year, we worked with a brand called Purity, who had an incredible story of their sustainability level is great. Like the way they make their beer, all the things they do is really helpful for us to speak about, because it allows us, when we do huge sustainability reports at the end of the year, show how much carbon we've saved. So speaking about that, having a brand that is part of our messaging and part of our story is really important.
Yeah. And so from the brand's point of view, it seems to me, as a kind of outside consumer looking in, that it's a no-brainer for them to be shouting about, oh my God, we're going to have a presence at Boomtown.
Sure.
Do you kind of help them with how they should tell that story in the lead up, and then maybe whatever content they've captured on site afterwards as well to shout about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we like to very much have a keen creative control from a comms department point of view on how we release, brand stories, let's say. And like, we work with brands and we work with our comms team to ensure that the way we speak about the brands really works for us and for the brand. If brands are wanting to kind of release stuff, especially on social media pre-show, which is quite sort of cookie cutter, looks like sort of everything else they're doing that year, we try and work with them to help them to create stuff that's a bit more Boomtown, a bit more original. That's what we really want to look for.
Yeah
100%.
Okay. And you talking about, was it Purity, the brand that you just mentioned?
Yes.
Just brings to mind something that I know that everybody in the live event space is really focusing on, obviously, at the moment, which is sustainability, but authentic sustainability. So is that, I don't know if you have like an actual sort of criteria list of brands that you work with, but would something like sustainability and the ethics of the brand, say, is that high up on the list of what aligns and what doesn't? Or do you find that people who come to you, brands who come to you, are kind of already aligned in terms of their sustainable outlook and stuff like that already?
I think for any major brand these days, if they haven't got sustainability as key as part of what they do, then it's not even something like you would suggest to a brand or ask them about. I think even for most brand activations or brand connections these days, brands that almost lead with it are usually doing the least, I find.
Yes.
So brands are actually doing the best at it, or brands that it's like 4th or 5th page on their website. It should be, part of what brands do. I don't think that we go and look for brands specifically for that. We just assume that, and obviously we do our due diligence to ensure that's the case. But most brands have that as part of their, what they do these days.
Yeah, so
it's not something that's kind of like down the list anymore.
Yeah, so it's kind of part of it should be, hopefully.
It should be, yeah.
Part of their DNA anyway, so it kind of hopefully comes as a given.
Yeah.
And what about the sustainability and environmental impact on the ground, as in the physical build and stuff like that of activations and partnerships?
Yeah, so this year for all of our activations and for all of the Boomtown set, we actually did a huge body of work, the production team did, to look at specifically a lot of the paints that we use. So a lot of the paints that we've used in previous years, or which everyone's been using, have like quite a lot of plastic in them. So we're using more. Last year we used like a chalk-based paint. This isn't a specific part of my expertise, so excuse me if I...
Tell us the chemical breakdown, Steve, or we will judge you.
So I know what it did do was save a hell of a lot of carbon this year. So,
Okay.
All the sort of things like, so just painting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of meters of set by using a specifically different paint allowed us to really make a big difference. So that goes into like, the wood that we source, where we source it from, how far it's traveling from site. The ops team, who are fantastic, have done a massive bit of work, which isn't just for activations, it's for everything we build on site, to ensure that all the things we do have as minimum impact as possible.
Yeah. Do you know what? Every time I talk about sustainability within the event space, I learn something. Like paint thing is so fascinating.
I didn't know.
No,
Who knew?
no, it's so these things, the impact that they can have collectively and cumulatively is just kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Boomtown from a outward pull back perspective, the amount of paint that's on site is insane.
Yeah.
So just that one small change has made a massive difference.
Yeah. So when we talk about Boomtown, obviously, as you said, it's like creating a city. How big is the site?
From a square metre point of view, I'm not entirely sure, but the bowl itself can comfortably fit 50 to 60,000 people in it.
Yeah.
So we have, that amount of people come to the show, and there's a massive bowl, Matterley bowl with a huge ridge around the edge of it, with 8 main stages in it. And then each of those stages has a district around it. In each of those districts, there's maybe 5 or 6 micro venues. So the main stage, which has a theme, and then each of those areas then has a micro venue, 5 or 6 micro venues. And it's like a journey around the site. They're all interlinked. So all the different areas have a different story, a different style, a different type of thing that they're trying to speak to. And then it all comes together to form a message. We have a message each year. Like last year was the Twin Trail, so which is all about kind of inner work and outer work. So there's lots of sort of yin and yang, all those kind of things. Then the storyline is then woven around it. So you can go and play Boomtown as a game. I don't know if you know that. So it's actually a game. So if you wanted to go to Boomtown, you could go and see a huge drum bass headliner, see HeadX close Boomtown, or you can do that and you can also play Boomtown like it's like a live game. So you can go and there's lots of different missions you can go on. So you get groups of people just missioning around the site, doing all these different things. You'll find a secret door, end up somewhere you didn't really realise. It's an amazing thing to do.
That's very cool.
I don't ever have time to actually do it myself, but I'm aware it's there.
Yeah, it must be quite surreal in some ways when you have been doing all the work to get to the point of the festival, and then suddenly it's happening, and then just as suddenly, if not more quickly, it's done, and then everything's broken down, and you're working on next year. I mean, and presumably you're already working on next year.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, you kind of usually work in a year and a half in advance.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like it goes an absolute blur as well. I mean, you'll get to site. I spend 6 weeks on site, do a 4 or 5 week run up, and then a week of show, and then a week after, and it's just bang, you're kind of back at home.
Yes.
And it just happens so fast.
Yeah, feeling like you've just been in a whirlwind. I can imagine.
But it's an incredible thing to be part of. To be part of that where you build a city for people to come and enjoy.
Yeah.
It's basically like building a theme park.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it is really.
Essentially
it's an adult theme park.
Yeah.
Build one, put it up, pack it down, put it in some shipping containers, and then get it back out next year.
Yeah. So I definitely want to come back to timeline in a minute, because I think that will be an interesting thing to talk about in terms of when brands need to get in contact with you. So we'll stick a pin in that for a second. Just wanted to jump on the point that you made about the districts. Do you theme the brand partnerships in each of those? Is it that kind of affected? Yeah,
so we would look at a brand, let's say Jägermeister, who have been a long-term partner of us for years. We would look at what they wanted to achieve, and then we'd look at where we would put the brand based on their kind of visually what they wanted it to look like. Okay. So the thing that the concept that came up for them last year for 2023 was a thing called Jaeger Block, which was essentially an old bottling factory that had been disused and then found, and then someone's having a rave in it, essentially. So speaking to that old sort of free party subculture, warehouse rave sort of stuff. So we kind of put it in a district that has that kind of look and feel to it, and blend that in. So we kind of build the whole run so it all kind of fits in. So there's like, if a brand came to me that, was, I don't know, I'm not going to name a brand, but a brand that was kind of like quite floaty and earthy, I wouldn't put them in area 404, which is like a sort of Mad Max or style area. So we very much look at the brand, and then we can then start building a visual idea of where we might put it. Yeah.
Okay. That makes complete sense. And then I guess that journey for the punters makes sense as well without them even realising, because it's got to be seamless and it's got to all be part of the experience.
Exactly, yeah. And as much as like, obviously we work with brands who have like touring kits they want to take different festivals, which is we are always part of, and we help them come in and we put them in the places that really work. For us, the kind of gold standard is to get a brand to do something which is bespoke, that we design, which we build, which we take ownership with the brand. It's like a true partnership, rather than it's kind of, there are sometimes where, certain styles of brand activations that might fit in one show won't fit in our show, and vice versa. But it's good to find brands that can kind of work from top to bottom, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to take that pin out of the timeline question now, because I don't want to forget it.
Sure.
And it's just a nice practical chunk of information for listeners to take away. If I'm a brand, when have I missed the boat? Like if I'm looking to jump on the Boomtown,
you've never missed the boat. Call me anytime.
Okay, don't listen to that, because I think you don't want to be held to.
No. I mean, in reality, by sort of April, May, if we haven't begun to design and build something and have like a really strong concept in place, it would be tricky.
Yeah.
So generally, if we are looking to design and build something, literally before the show. So I'd be talking to a brand before the show or directly afterwards. So that's, October, November, December period is very important to kind of get ideas in place.
Okay, that's good to know. And in terms of brands who might like to get involved, would you recommend that brands need to be of a certain level of having been established, a certain size? Could a startup? I'm sure startups come to you all the time.
Yeah.
Is there like an accessible entry point?
Well, I think that for all brands, there's always something you can do. If you want to activate a brand, it doesn't have to be a 60-meter run of set with a 500 capacity club inside it. You can do things like, I remember we came up with a concept for a brand a few years ago where it was they wanted to do kind of more placemaking. So we were going to paint a few picnic tables, the brand colour, and then have some brand ambassadors in the area doing some sampling. So it was like a really kind of quite low-key, quite nice in a sort of dwell time area, so the brand could get a nice connection, but it wasn't going to cost them, X amount of money. So it was accessible, and we can do it, and we can work with a brand to make that happen. So there is always options for even start-up, really, entry-level brands.
Okay. And in terms of the types of brands that you work with, we would assume it's F&B, FMCG.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the standard, right?
A lot of stuff that is consumed at the show.
I guess stuff that, again, fits in so much with the scene that you're setting, the city that you're setting up, the Boomtown life that you're setting up, that they blend and they feel so naturally part of it that they will experience it as they experience everything.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, this is quite Boomtown specific. We're never going to try and sell someone a car at Boomtown or something like that,
No, I mean, I've seen it. I've normally seen that in places like Dubai, where you can buy a car in the airport.
We're never going to go down that route where we'll put something in that's just obviously never going to work.
That's just a bit weird, yeah.
It's always got to be something that's part of people's experience that we can get a brand involved in, so that there's that, ROI, so people can see that the whatever's we're collaborating with is being bought, and then we can elevate the brand and elevate the citizens' experience. We call Boomtown people citizens.
Yeah, nice. Okay. Now, I do want to talk about your own road to Boomtown.
Sure.
Well, your road to this particular area of festival brand partnerships, because it's a pretty cool story, and what you were doing as an activation seems like such a natural fit. But it does also make me want to ask you this question, and don't worry.
Go for it.
Don't worry if you can't remember one or nothing comes to mind. Has there ever been a brand that's come to you, and you don't need to name the brand, but just maybe what they do, and you thought, oh my God, that's never going to fit, and then a surprise, it's been a challenge, but it's worked out? Or are they usually kind of quite templatey in terms of how it works?
It's difficult to say, really. I mean, it's kind of something I probably wouldn't like. I mean, there's obviously a few brands that have come to us which we're never gonna work with them.
Oh yeah, no, I wasn't quite saying, sorry, if your name's not down, you're not coming in.
Yeah, sure.
It was more...
brands that have surprised me.
Yeah, something that's come to you that wasn't a beer brand or wasn't, one of those, and it's actually worked out. Or does it just, is it natural bedfellows that just you come in and you don't?
I think that there's such an obvious natural fit for festivals that, it's very unusual to get a brand which is so far out of that scene looking to be part of it.
Yeah.
Because... we would never our paths wouldn't cross, because, to bring something to a show, there's got to be a reason that it's being sold at the show, or people are going to want to buy it. So, and people are only going to want to be part of an activation or be part of a kind of brand moment because it's part of the festival that they're doing. If it leads them out of it, we'd never really kind of make it to show or kind of make it through the sort of first gate. So I can't think off the top of my head where that's happening.
Only because you mentioned the car that you put it in my head. I was thinking, oh, come on, there must be something that's made it through.
Our car company's never contacted me.
Next time you go to Boomtown, guys, there's going to be a car sitting outside the gates, and you know why, where the conversation started. Okay, so let's go back to your story.
Sure.
And how you came into this world, because not how you were born. That's a very strange way of me to rephrase that question. But you know what
I mean. So I suppose I've not got like a normal route to this world. I mean, I didn't
have any of us.
No, I suppose nobody really has. Yeah, I mean, I basically come from a sort of academic family background. All my brothers and sisters, did the university thing, had degrees, doctorates, etc. I was the youngest of four, and it was never really for me. It wasn't really anything I really keyed in with. It's always much more artistic, and I was into BMXing, skateboarding, all that sort of stuff. And so I got to 17. I tried college, and it was definitely not for me. I couldn't be in a classroom anymore. I had struggled to sit still at the best of times, as you've probably realised. And so, I dropped out of college and basically wanted to get a trade. And I looked at different trades and I was like, there's no way I'm going on a building site because I don't want to be in the cold. So I started being a barber. This was like back in the late 90s. And, at the same time, I was going to Glastonbury, going to free parties. It's very much part of that free party world. Parties in quarries, going to Wales in the back of a van, that whole kind of world, which was, pretty amazing time, really. Pre-YouTube, pre-phones, pre-all of that, which is a great sort of period to, I think, sort of have that young life.
And sometimes I feel sorry for a generation growing up who have never known life without a phone. They've never known life of that kind of ad hoc, on the spot, let's just go and do this and let's go and do... I mean...
I'll tell you a story about trying to get to a free party. I used to go to free parties a lot. And then this is sort of pre-mobile phones. So basically, the way you could get to a free party would be you'd ring up a free party hotline and there'd be like some bloke, always with a London accent, going, go down the A38, turn left at the phone box, blah, blah, blah. And then you'd find the party. You'd have to stand on a car and listen for the sound of the free
noise.
Party. And then, so you'd be driving to the party and then you'd sort of get wind via somehow that the directions have changed. You'd have to re-ring the number up and then they'd give you another number that you didn't have to ring. It'd be like another answer phone message you'd have to listen to. But of course, we were like in a car, no one had a pen.
Yeah.
So a distinct memory of that era is being in a phone box, breathing like condensation onto the window of a phone box, writing a number onto the side, and then getting a 20p and then re-ringing the number before it disappeared in the warm sort of summer night. Yeah. So that's the struggle that you went through in that era.
That's a Netflix series right there. That whole era. Just put it in a series. Okay, so back to you're going to amazing parties.
Yeah, so cut my teeth as a barber, worked in barbershops in Bristol, was having a great time, just did a lot of travelling, went away to Thailand, drove a motorbike across India, did the whole kind of early 20s thing, which was incredible. Was having a great life, very much kind of carefree, had a trade, which I wanted to have, was earning good money, sort of it was a kind of era where you could earn sort of quite good money and live quite simply in Bristol. And then my daughter, Lana, was born in 2007. And it was kind of like, right, I need to, get a career going.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of links with the festival scene, been going to Shambhala, Glastonbury, etc. And basically just came up with a concept to build a barbershop brand, before I opened a shop. So I proposed to Shambhala, the guy who runs it, Sid, that we do a barbershop with a discotheque in it. And he was like, great, we're going to call it. So we're like, Shambhala, Shambarber. So that was basically the brand name just kind of came in that afternoon.
Very cool.
We did the event with like a 500 quid budget, I think. We borrowed a marquee off a friend of mine. We had a hand-built sound system. We basically dragged some chairs into a field and had a party. It was great. And then that gradually expanded and it got bigger and bigger. We ended up sort of dropping the barbershop element of it, and then it just became a party. So it had like a cocktail bar, 3 different secret entrances, just like a multi-venue micro club at Shambhala, which was great. And then I got to a sort of point where in 2012 I was in a position to then open a salon in Bristol. So then opened Sham Barber in Bristol. And that's actually the first point I started working with brands. We started to do like a boiler room style thing in the barbershop called the Barbershop to promote the shop in the city. So Red Bull approached us and offered us to use their sound systems to do the sort of broadcast from the shop. So we put a 5K rig in the shop. We'd have parties every month with local club nights, and that's basically how the brand then grew.
Yeah.
So sort of by accident, I began to activate brands without knowing it.
Yeah, without realising they were activations, that's exactly what they were.
Yeah, so then I spent the next 10 years doing that, Shambhala, Boomtown, did some stuff at Glastonbury, and then Love Saves the Day then gave us the opportunity in Bristol to have an outdoor stage, which we built up and up. So we were like very much entrenched with like the local house scene, worked with a lot of drag queens. The stage grew and grew at Love Saves the Day in Bristol, and the one at Shambhala grew and grew. Then it became lots of different things. It became like a venue called Stiletto Disco. The original idea was you're going to have to wear stilettos to gain entrance, but health and safety weren't happy about that. So
Okay.
didn't do that. And then so we created a stiletto that was a slide, so you have to slide into the venue.
Very nice.
So you have to climb up the back of the stiletto and then slide into the dance floor, which
Okay.
is great.
Amazing.
So basically spent the next 10 years basically doing brand activations without realising it. And then obviously COVID hit,
Yes.
and then that all stopped.
Yeah.
And then I sort of thought to myself, that's really what I want to be doing, is working in that activation space, become more aware of how powerful that can be for brands. And at the same time, at Shambhala, Bearded Kitten, do you know who Bearded Kitten are?
No.
They're like a collective that were started at festivals that are now do a lot of stuff with brands.
Mm-hmm.
They went on to do that. They began to move into that kind of more brand space, and I was inspired by them and decided to get into it myself. I was friends with Chris Rutherford from Boomtown, and they gave me a chance. And then ended up here 3 years later. I'm 3 shows in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So unusual path.
Yeah, but brilliant because it's an actual lived path to get there, as opposed to having a kind of more abstract idea in your head of a job title or something that you wanted to go towards.
Yeah.
But you're actually just living it day to day, and before you know it, this is what you're doing, and everything you've done on the journey makes complete sense.
Yeah. Sometimes I think life is like that. You don't realise the combination of things you do are leading you to the point you're at.
Absolutely.
Who knows where that where that leads in the future as well.
Yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
what life's like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been very lucky. I'm really, very lucky to kind of get where I am.
Well, I
Be given
can imagine there's been a hell of a lot of hard work.
It's been a
along
lot
the
of
way.
work. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky. Here I am.
Yeah.
Aw.
Ta-da! No. I mean, but I do feel lucky. It's an amazing space to work in, and I do feel lucky to be able to work with brands to weave them into festivals, and it's like kind of having those creative ideas, which I've just been doing myself from a solely creative point of view, to be able to bring that to brands, and they can see the, magic of it. Sounds really grandiose, but like the power of it
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah. And there's a huge amount of creativity in what you do. I mean, yes, the numbers have got to make sense, and it's got to make sense commercially. That's part of your title, after all. But if you didn't have that incredible creativity, which you can't really manufacture, that you can't really teach yourself, you're either born with it or you don't. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it can evolve a bit. But
Sure. And also, like, spending 10 years understanding how festivals work really helped with that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of brands will say, like, we want to do this, I want to do X, Y, or Z, but, I understand how SCAF fits together, how it's got
Yes.
to sit on the ground, how you
Yeah.
get power to it, how can we pack it down, where can we put it, what shipping container can it go in, how can a truck bring it to site, what's it got to be made out of, all of those sort of things. So I can take having an idea and then an end point and bringing them together, rather than, being creative, having a creative team and then an operational production team, having that all in one line
Yes.
works for brands.
Yeah, it makes so much more sense, because I think sometimes, and this is not just the case in the live sphere, but in any kind of combination of creativity and operational creativity and the practical, if the creative is going so left field and so crazy with the idea that it's never going to actually
Turn into
touch
reality.
Absolutely. So it's kind of refreshing to hear that there is that connection and it's all joined up.
And it works well for brands as well, because they I, from the sales moment, when I first connect with a brand, to the moment we pack it back away and, see you next year, I'm there through that whole journey. So,
Yeah.
it's an unusual position for brands to have, that someone takes them through every step of it.
Yes,
Yeah.
which I guess sort of takes me back to the thought that I was having about, whether there's a kind of minimal size or minimal experience of brand before they can come to you and do a partnership. Because I was thinking of all the practical stuff. Before we had this conversation today, I was thinking, oh my God, the logistics and the build and it must be so stressful.
Don't panic.
But yeah, don't panic, because if your hand is being held as much as you need it to be, not in a sort of controlling, scary way, but just in a reassuring guidance way,
Sure.
that must really help brands to
Definitely.
to see their vision come to life.
And also it helps with the kind of year-on-year connection with brands, because they may come in with ideas to do X, and then they see that, what we can deliver, what we can build for them, what we can do for the brand, and then they entrust, that trust builds. And
Yeah.
you can build on that. So year 2, you do something more. You can expand on those ideas and that creativity. So
Yeah.
having that kind of year-on-year trust is great.
Yeah. I think so many things are based on relationships and
100%.
building them and maintaining them and looking after them just genuinely as humans. And then all the great business stuff just kind of comes out of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's also born out of years of just being in that world and understanding what people need, when people need it, and how to get it for them as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff, especially when it comes to being on site, trying to make things happen on site is definitely a bit of an art. There's a kind of the dark arts of the festival world.
Yeah.
So many moving parts, and being able to kind of really grease those wheels and take a brand through that and ensure that what we say is going to happens.
And also bearing in mind we are in a field and the unpredictable will just happen.
The heavens have opened.
Yeah.
Etc.
Surprise.
Yeah. Kills the breeze.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can talk us through any of these, but during this last 3 years when we've been, thank God, out of COVID and everyone's been back in the fields, have there been some partnership highlights that kind of are things that you're super proud of? I mean, it sounds like you should be so proud of everything you've achieved, but
thank you.
In terms of Boomtown.
Yeah, I mean, I touched on the Jägermeister project,
Yes,
which I'm really proud of. Yeah, working with them to, basically design and build a club for them in a field was great. Previously they had the Jaeger House. I think that was in 2017-18. I'm not quite sure the date. So that was something they travelled around. So to get the trust from them to build something that lives at Boomtown was really felt really great. And yeah, we're working with them again this year, rebuilding the Jaeger block, and then Relentless, who we're working really closely with. There's an area in Boomtown called the Grid, which is essentially a giant square of shipping containers, probably 25 containers each side in a square, 2 containers high. We came up with the concept to turn the sort of back L of the containers into a activation bar, which looks down into the arena.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, it was an incredible journey to basically take 6 raw shipping containers and then turn them into a bar, bring them to site, and then put them on top of another run of shipping containers. Was a hell of a bit of production.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, and shout out to the Boomtown production team, especially Lana, who I work with, who's head of production at Boomtown, who's just been incredible at helping me bring those ideas to life.
Yeah.
As much as I'm great at ideation and all the brand stuff and coming up with ideas and working with stuff on site, without the kind of team at Boomtown, none of this would happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shout out to Lana.
Yeah, that's the backbone of making it all happen. And what about stuff that you're excited about on the horizon, future? I mean, again, you may not be able to talk about it, but if there's anything that you have got on your radar, it'd be
there's
great
a few things that I can't talk about currently.
Oh,
but
I knew you were going to say that.
there's some very exciting developments happening this year, but it's stuff I can't quite talk about yet, I'm afraid.
Steve.
Yeah, there's a brand new bespoke build that I'm currently designing, building, which is going to come to life this year.
Intriguing.
Which I'm very excited about.
Okay.
Yeah. So all will be revealed soon.
Okay.
So apologies, but that's
still
under wraps.
I mean, yeah, if that's the way you're going to play it. Okay. So what do you most look forward to when you've got, let's say you've got all the I's in place and the T's crossed? What is the thing? When's the moment that you're like, I can breathe and I'm excited about this? Or is that all the time for you?
There's always a moment when you walk into a space that you've curated, designed, built, however you want to put it. and you'll have X amount of people in it or around it or whatever they're meant to be doing with it, and they're really enjoying themselves. Like, it's a DJ's playing, it's absolutely going off in a venue, and you sort of stand there and you think, you feel there's a moment you're like, it's happening.
Yes.
It's doing what it's meant to do.
Yeah.
And that's a great feeling, yeah. And I've had that from, the first moment when I started running club nights, to doing festival stages, to brand activations, to all the stuff I do with all the brands that I've worked with. There's always that one moment you walk in, it'll be like 1 a.m. and it's absolutely going off. People are losing their minds and you're like, great, job done.
We did it.
Mic drop, walk out.
Yes. Oh.
So yeah, I still get that. I still, really get that pleasure from it.
Yeah.
100%.
I'm really gutted that these mics are in place because amazingly we have come to the end of our conversation. Oh. And I'd love you to do a mic drop, but I don't think we can make it happen. But there's a mic drop there. We mean the mic drop. Steve Hammond-Parker, Commercial and Brand Partnership Manager at Boomtown. Did I get that right?
Perfect. I know it's a bit of a
wow, that's your name and the title. It's a real thing.
Many words.
But thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
For joining us
pleasure.
on The Secret 2. And okay, you didn't give us all your secrets, but you played it masterfully. So thank you very much.
Thank you.